Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Welcome to Houselights, the show on the Nerd Party Network that looks at the works of directors from beginning to finish, or sometimes by decade. This is House of Coppola. I am delighted that we are starting this journey looking at the works of Francis Ford Coppola in the 1970s. I am John Mills, and I am pleased as punch to have the two people joining me here on this podcast, Tristan Riddell and Darren Moser. Darren, you're going to be in the hot seat tonight. So I'm going to toss it to Tristan first and say, Tristan, how are you this fine evening?
Don't ask me about my business, John. Don't ever ask me about my business.
Just this one time. And Darren, how are you doing?
Well, you come to me, you want to talk about this movie on the day of my death. Well, no, wait, no, she's nowhere near wedding age. But I'm excited. Yes, I think the cat's out of the bag that all of the movies, the Coppola movies that we're going to be talking about over the next few weeks, I have never seen. I am that rare 30-something-year-old film student who just never got into Coppola. So it's going to be a lot of fun.
This is going to be a joyous excursion. Of course, thank you for joining with us for it as we engage in the education of young Darren. And we are, of course, on the Nerd Party Network. You can reach out to us, thenerdparty.com/contact. Look up Houselights. Drop us a line if you want to. You can find the network over on Twitter at Join Nerd Party, and you can find the Nerd Party on Facebook and Instagram. And, of course, if you'd be so kind, we would love to get your star rating and review over on Apple Podcasts, because it means the world to us, because we're out here, we're doing it for the love of the game. And also, we would love to know if you're listening, we would love to know what you think. So go on over to Apple Podcasts and give us a rating and review. Now, of course, Darren, again, we'll come to you last in the order here. So we always love to kick off with the question of when was your first encounter with the film? And I think I have actually a pretty unique story on my end, but Tristan, how much of this movie did your dad let you see the first time you encountered it?
Well, the first time I saw this was on TV.
Wow.
So it was the TV cut.
Wow. That's got to be so different.
And
90 minutes or so, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
It was, I cannot remember how old I was. Like I was a kid, but I wasn't like 7 or anything like that. I think I was maybe 12, somewhere around in there. And I remember Dom DeLuise was hosting Grillin' with the Godfather on AMC or TCM, something like that. And I'd never seen him before because my parents weren't and aren't big Coppola fans. They're not Godfather people, like they never really watched it. They were aware of it, of course. I think my dad had seen it, but he's not like a huge fan or anything. And when it was Independence Day weekend is when it was. And that my birthday was on July 5th. And so we always throw a big thing for Independence Day, big barbecue. And then we also have cake for my birthday. And I remember like on the day, like I think it was July 4th, we had to set up for everything. But Dom DeLuise talking about The Godfather, giving like behind the scenes tidbits and talking about like, oranges and what they mean. Like he would, he just kind of drew me in. And so like, as I was getting ready for the weekend, I kept like the TV was just on. I kept walking past it slower and slower to the point where I just sat down in front of it and I was just entranced. I was like, holy crap. Like, this is amazing. And then thankfully, like the next day they showed Godfather Part 2. And then the day after that, they showed Godfather Part 3. So it was a 3-day weekend type deal with Dom DeLuise. That is how I watched all 3 movies. And I became obsessed after that. Like I tried to get the copies wherever I could find them. And I started reading the novel and the screenplay and, researching it online when researching online was a chore, like it was a lot of fun. That's how I first encountered it.
Now, see, this is interesting because encountering it on TV, I'm delighted that you did, of course. And of course, I know that the inevitable question, probably lost to the sands of time, is there was a television cut of The Godfather. Was it that cut or was it a re-edited for TV cut?
It was a re-edited for TV cut.
Okay. That's fair. That's fair enough. I didn't even know the TV cut existed until well after I'd seen The Godfather. Myself, I actually saw The Godfather Part 2 first. Because my brother I knew was a Godfather fan. And so when we were teenagers, I was just swinging for the fences and I got him The Godfather Part 2. I'd never seen either one of them. I found The Godfather Part 2 on the shelf and I said, he likes Godfather things. Sure. And he opened it and he said, oh, we're going to watch this. And I said, but I haven't seen the first one. He goes, doesn't matter. You'll love it anyway. And of course I did. Then I went back and I watched The Godfather. And much like you, became obsessed about it. Read every material that I could. Remember reading the tidbits somewhere along the way that the ratio of film shot to film used was something like 30-1. Yeah. And of course, they're behind the scenes, arguments about different people trying to take credit for the cut and different people trying to take credit for the ideas and stuff like that. But at its core, what was always most fascinating to me was knowing that novel was out there and knowing that they cut so much from the book to create the film. And knowing that, I then jumped into the novel. And yeah, the novel is a completely different experience. It is a completely weirder experience. Like I argue that if your first exposure to The Godfather is the film, reading the novel can be a little bit disorienting because it spends so much more time with Lucy and Johnny Fontaine and where they end up and stuff like that. And it's like, I don't care about this stuff as much. And of course, there were certain things for Godfather Part 2 that they then recycled and used for flashback scenes and stuff like that.
Like Vito's backstory and everything.
Right. Exactly. So, but it was a huge hit. It came out, it was March 10th, 1969 is when the book was released, and it spent, what was it? It was 67 weeks on the New York Times bestseller list. So this thing was huge. And I remember also Puzo said that a lot of times he would go to dinner in New York and he would be told this bottle of wine is for you, or the dinner was comped, or what have you. And he's like, oh, well, that's kind of weird. But okay, so we've given our backstory. We've been living with The Godfather for a very long time. Darren, I'm presuming that you watched just the original theatrical cut of this on which format? How did you encounter The Godfather for your first time here?
Yeah, so it was, I have to set the Wayback Machine to 2021.
Wow.
And
okay.
No, I think just the standard theatrical version, full, it was no 4:3 craziness, full frame.
Actually, I want to interrupt you, Darren. Before you talk about your first experience watching it, I want to know
what did I know going into it.
Like, what did you know about The Godfather before you went into it? Like, how much? Because The Godfather is so much in our culture. It's in the zeitgeist. It's in our. It's just in our brains. True. And in our vocabulary. Like going to the mattresses. Leave the gun, take the cannoli, things like that. Like so many people know these phrases. Consigliere, was introduced to the English speakers through this novel and through this movie. So what did you know about the film before you sat down to watch it?
No, that's a good point. And we can do a missing frames tangent and pull in that VHS. Yeah, again, I knew the high points. I mean, everyone knows I'm going to make him an offer he can't refuse. You can kind of infer what that means. I'd seen a clip of the horse head in his bed, and that's been referenced. I think The Simpsons is referenced. Everybody's referenced that heavily. And there were some scenes that I hadn't necessarily recalled before watching it, but then during watching it, I'm like, oh, I think I'd seen that in some clip somewhere. So like the shootout at the toll booth, I think I'd seen on like a YouTube list of best, gangster movies or something like that. But the vast majority of the movie, I didn't really know what the plot was going to be. I didn't know. I knew it started at his wedding, and it's like half an hour we're at that wedding. Like it's a long time that we're there. But yeah, I didn't really know what was going to happen or who was going to do what. I was just really trying to focus on, okay, what is his character's name? Like, how is he related? What is his role going to be? Because there's a lot of characters to absorb, but really it was just those big moment again, make an offer and horsehead in his bed. That was pretty much what I had to go on. again, like you said, that zeitgeist that, parodied here and there, but but as far as the plot, I'm just watching the play bar move along on this 3-hour movie, and I'm like, we're still at the wedding. It's been like half an hour. Like, what is going to happen? And it was a fun ride to buckle up. So that was my introduction to it. Not very much, except for those high points.
So, given that though, as you're watching it with fresh eyes,
right?
Did this feel like an experience of watching a dated movie in any sense? Or was this a movie where you felt, well, this could be released today and be embraced?
That's a good question. I guess I would initially just answer it's a Coppola film. So, I mean, he already has this kind of air of his movies are different. And, he's from that era of like Coppola and Kubrick and just these directors who kind of just did their own thing. And it was an experience that, you're buckling in for this movie. It's not going to be conventional. It's going to maybe tell a conventional story, a love story or a family story. But, I don't know how well it would fit nowadays just because of the pace. I mean, it's very slow.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess the big surprise for me, I didn't know going into it that it's Michael's story. I thought it was going to be the Don story because he's the Godfather. It's the title. So of course it's going to be his story. And yes, obviously he plays a major part, but from the moment that we meet Michael as the war hero in the first few, he's almost a minor character in that first third, but he is and becomes the Godfather. So that was, I wouldn't say a shock or a surprise, but I had no idea of where the story was going to go. It spans years. A lot of time passes as well.
10 years.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I think the beginning, it's like in the 40s.
It's 45 to 55.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. I heard him mention like 46 or 47 at one point. And because I wasn't even, I guess if I think about it now, yeah, those cars did look a little early than 70s. It has a 70s film look in general, like just the grain and the feel. Like it, not that it doesn't feel like it's in the 40s, like they do fit it that way, but Vegas is very new Vegas. There's like nothing there.
I get what you're saying though. Like it's definitely it's a it was shot and made in the early 70s, and so it feels like a 70s film, even though it takes place in the 40s, as it should.
I don't think I gave too much thought on when it was set until they dropped 46, and then my mind started to like recalibrate to like, oh yeah, those kind of cars. Oh yeah, that kind of technology, like the hospital looks very dated, and then it all made sense.
Yeah, you were talking about Michael's story and everything like that. Al Pacino was super pissed that he was nominated for Best Supporting Actor and not Best Actor, because Marlon Brando was nominated and won Best Actor, even though he had less than an hour of screen time in the movie.
But isn't Marlon Brando one of those like bigger it's like Citizen Kane level, like people throw that name around and you're like, is it really worth that fame? I don't know.
Brando was definitely the bigger name at the time. Absolutely. And actually,
he's Superman's dad. He's got to be a bigger name.
But it's very interesting because I remember that the studio did not want, number one, they didn't want Brando initially. And that Coppola had to fight for Pacino because the studio felt that Pacino was too short for the role, and they wanted James Caan to play Michael.
Okay,
and that was another
Pacino
battle that they
knocks
had.
it out of the park, though. I can't imagine anyone.
Yeah,
is this the film that launched Al Pacino? Because it feels like the film that launched Al Pacino.
I don't know anybody that is familiar with his career prior to this film. Like
that
regardless, but like I'm agreeing with you because it's one of those things where you think of how did Al Pacino get his start? And I know he was in stuff before this, but
like right after this, he did Serpico, and then a few years after that, he did Dog Day Afternoon.
Yeah.
So like, yeah.
When was The Graduate in relation to that? Because I feel like that's the other No,
That was Hoffman.
That's Dustin Hoffman.
That's
Never mind.
Dustin Hoffman.
They're all so
That's
young. They look a lot alike when they go back that far.
I looked it up
That
just
was
now.
a test. Dustin Hoffman was not in this movie.
Pacino did a TV series in '68, a movie in '69, like a movie in '69 and '71, and then he did Godfather. I've never heard of the two movies that he did.
This was his breakout role.
This was very much his breakout role.
Oh yeah,
that makes
very
sense.
much. And I think that a lot of people, this was a breakout role sort of situation. But I do want to double back to this, that when people think of The Godfather, Brando does loom large. He eclipses discussions about other people. And, I'll kick this to you first, Tristan. Do you think that's in any way fair? Do you think that that's a product of the hype around it or the Oscar buzz? Or do you just think that Brando is such a commanding presence in the film that you just can't not think about him?
Like Darren was talking about, like the title is The Godfather, and Marlon Brando plays the Godfather, even though this is very much Michael's movie. This is Michael's movie. You can't get past a name like Brando, a performance like Brando, in the title of the film. I mean, Brando commanded this film while he was on screen and also behind the scenes too. Like there was a lot of things that like Brando,
different movie, very
different movie.
Yes.
Brando was able to like nix ideas, like say he didn't want certain people in the movie. Like he had so much clout. Like he wasn't a producer or anything like that, but he had so much clout as a star that he was able to convince Coppola on what to do and what not to do on certain things.
Which arguably sets the very bad precedent that carries through in Apocalypse Now, which we'll be getting to in a few episodes here, because Brando indulging him now pays dividends later.
But to answer your question, absolutely. As much as I love Pacino in this, and I think this is Pacino's movie, Brando steals the show whenever he's on screen. He ceases to be Brando, and he is Vito Corleone. Maybe I'm overstating it. Maybe I'm sure that there's some people who are just like, Brando's Brando. He's always going to be Brando. I don't know. But to me, I only see the Don. I only see Vito. I don't see Brando, even though Brando has very familiar and distinct affectations. It was his idea to do the prosthesis, the jaw prosthesis, because he wanted him to look like a bulldog. It was his idea to do the voice because he based it off of, I think, was it Frank Costello? I think like a real life mobster. And, he owned this character. Of course, he didn't memorize his lines because Brando never does. But, it's a big yes to you. Like it's like Brando deserved the Oscar. This is what he'll always be remembered for. And even though it's kind of like The Dark Knight, where it's a Batman movie and Christian Bale does an amazing Batman, an amazing performance, but when Joker's on the screen, it's a joke. It's Joker. A Joker movie.
Yeah. No, that's a fair point. And actually a funny story I don't know if you've heard, but I love telling this story that has to do with Brando not memorizing lines and stuff like that, is the scene where he's talking to Luca Brasi, and God forgive me for getting the actor's name, but where he stops for a second and it looks like he's lost his train of thought, and then he picks up and he keeps going. It's because Brando had apparently written F-U on a piece of tape and put it on like a white gaffer's tape and put it on his tongue and stuck out his tongue at him to try to make him break, so that they could make Luca look like he was a little bit bumbling and nervous in front of
I heard a completely different story.
Really? See, this is the thing I love, is this movie has been around for so long. There are so many urban legends around it. What's the story that you heard?
That's the thing. Like whenever I read up on this film, there were so many contradicting stories about this movie that you have no idea what's true. And it's frustrating and also fascinating at the same time. So what I heard, and his name's Lenny Montana. Mm-hmm. So what I heard is that Lenny Montana was so utterly nervous to share the screen with Marlon Brando that he flubbed his lines. Like the take that ended up in the movie was his first take, and
is he the one who's outside like practicing his lines?
He's outside practicing
because I
his
had
lines.
heard that story that he was practicing his lines like for the shooting, and they actually shot it because they're like, let's make that part of his character.
No,
that's the story I heard.
Yeah, I know. That's the thing. There's three people in this podcast, and there's three different stories about this one single moment. Because the story that I heard, what it was that he was so nervous that he flubbed his lines. And then they're like, okay, well, let's do it again. And then they did multiple takes. He got it right. But Coppola liked that he was so nervous around him that he actually wrote in real quick, okay, we're going to shoot him practicing his lines out front. And so they actually added that in later when they did the wedding stuff on the day.
It makes him a great little moment of a character. Like, I love that.
Yeah.
It was good to keep it in because it doesn't feel like a movie pull back the curtain moment. It feels like, yeah, you're going to meet Don Corleone, like and you know, he's a bruiser, you know, he's not
right,
you know, a really smart guy.
Well, and it winds up being terrific shorthand for something they can't spend too much film time covering, that the book dictates, that the Godfather has like this magnetic hold on Luca Brasi, and nobody quite understands how that works, right? Like the Godfather is the one person that Luca Brasi fears, and Luca Brasi he's a monster. Like it's kind of interesting because Luca Brasi in the film gets talked about as a monster, is obviously a giant guy, very imposing, but when you read about him in the book, he's way worse. He's not at all sympathetic or cute or funny. And that is something of a character shift that happens. And so there are a number of subtle character shifts that, I mean, you know, they're unavoidable because arcs get truncated and stuff like that. But Darren, I want to ask you, do you feel, you know, with your first time watching, do you feel that these characters were very clearly drawn? Were they distinct? Was it easy to differentiate? Was there anybody in there where you felt like, oh, he just exists to deliver lines or something like that? Or do you feel that every character was well-formed and essential?
Yeah, I think they did a pretty good job, especially since you have like extended family and sisters and brothers and uncles, and you know, and you have multiple crime families that you go apart. So everyone, even if their names weren't, well, that's, I guess that's part of it, is they're always saying everyone's name over and over and over multiple times. So that helps a lot. And
it's like Jack and Rose of Titanic.
Oh, gosh.
Right.
But you're able to, I think, track it pretty well. It wasn't too difficult. Although I will say, I watched the beginning of Godfather in the true fashion it was meant, where you forget to turn the subtitles on. So when they're talking full Italian, you're just assuming it's not meant to have subtitles, and you're just meant to infer what they're saying. And it's really passionate. And then you're like, they've been talking for a good like 5 minutes like this. I'm pretty sure I'm supposed to know what they're saying. So you back up and
so when Michael's in Sicily, you're like, it's suddenly a foreign film.
No, it's more like when he's the right before the shootout scene where he's going to kill him.
Well, that shootout scene isn't subtitled.
Okay.
Well, that shootout scene isn't supposed to be subtitled.
Okay, I turned it on after that, so I was absorbing it, and I'm like, I can kind of get the gist of what they're inferring and the way they're talking,
right?
And then later, you know, there was, I think most things are subtitles, but that makes more sense that scene specifically was not subtitled.
Once he's in Sicily and you know, Michael and everybody's talking in Italian, then the subtitles pop up. But like when they're at the restaurant with McCluskey and Salazzo, thank you. It's like Coppola's just like, nah, this doesn't need to be subtitled. You know what's being said. You know what's going on.
Was there a moment when he's in Sicily, because he's at the little cafe and he's talking to the father, and there was a moment where he's translating through his friend, and then he starts talking English, and they act like it's all cool. Is that supposed to be inferring that he's still talking Italian and we just understand now?
No, that's not a Red October moment. Like,
okay,
the real life reason was because Al Pacino didn't really speak fluent Italian, and he's like I can't do this much Italian at one time. And they said they're like, okay, we'll make it a translation scene.
Okay, yeah, that that made a lot of sense. And oh my gosh, he has this whole wife and
Mhm.
like this little microcosm of a life in Italy, and then he comes back, and that's where I was like, how many years is this movie? It's like it is spanning a long time.
Well, I mean, he still has his bruise.
Mhm.
You know,
Right.
like when Apollonia dies, he still has this bruise on his face. Now, granted, like that kind of bruise takes a long time to heal.
And they inferred like his jaw was broken, like
Yeah.
he got messed up
Yeah.
by
Yeah.
the punch.
In the book, they very clearly say that like his cheekbone got crushed when he was punched. That like it was a full on like face damaging. Like it took a long time for him. to heal
It
from
felt
that.
like that in the movie as well. So even at that point, there's a little bit still left, but you're like,
Mhm.
okay, that was a major issue because obviously a lot of time had passed in that moment with their relationship.
But it was a year. You know,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
it
That's
was
a long time.
it was a year, and so he had he met his wife, he met his future wife, got married, she got assassinated, all within a year,
And then he comes back like nothing happened, and it's like, what?
I always forget when he comes back to the States and then finds Kay, and then Kay says, "How long have you been back?" And he's like, "What did he say? Like a year?"
He's
or
like
two?
a year, maybe more.
Yeah.
So he's been back. So it's been 2 years since he left, at least.
At least 2 years.
Yeah.
And I'm just
Mhm.
like, I always forget that. And it always blows my mind. I'm just like, oh my God, Kay, you have no self-respect.
I know. And he's basically like, get in the car. I love you. I'm saying all the things you want me to say. And it's like, lady, no, can't you tell he's different? Because he's different. Like,
yeah, no.
Oh my God.
He's,
I mean,
he's got a
he-
security detail now.
well, he's taking steps. Obviously, his character does. But I mean, honestly, the death of his wife, it pushes him much farther down that path.
John, I want to ask you a question.
Sure.
I always felt like the change in Michael's character was too much when he got to Sicily. I felt like he was a very different Michael when he got to Sicily. Are we just supposed to believe that killing two men in cold blood and all the situations that surrounding that circumstance changed him? Or what? Or like, do you think I'm off base? Or what do you think about the change of Michael's character?
No, I do think he's different. I think that he's gone down that step, right? I mean, he's obviously done something, but he had a righteous reason for doing it. In essence, and please forgive me, everybody's going to roll their eyes so hard here, but it's like Anakin killing the Tusken Raiders.
I knew you were going
right?
to bring that up. I knew you were going to bring that up.
I had to. I felt obligated. No, but seriously, he kills McCluskey and Solozzo, but it feels like a justifiable thing to him. It's necessary. They tried to kill his dad. He is honor bound to do it. And I think when he goes to Sicily, it's not that he's necessarily that much of a darker character, but I think he's just moved along to the point where that part of life is dead to him in a sense. And now he is in the old country. So there is something that's been awakened in him. He's now where he really belongs. This is the life he belongs in. So when that is ripped away from him and he's thrown back into that life, right? Like Michael's escape vector is Sicily. He finds a pure love and a happiness, right? He can leave that behind, and now he gets thrown back. Like it very much, in a sense, like if you want to read it, I don't think that this is intentional at all, but there's almost the sense that the corrupting influence of the mafia in America, Michael escapes it and becomes a little bit more of the person that he would have wanted to be. And then as soon as that's gone and he's thrown back into the corrupting influence of this mafia superstructure, then it's just evil Michael from that point forward. That's how I take it, at least. I mean, Darren, do you agree with that? Or
Yeah, I'd feel like there's 3 points along his arc. There's, the hospital scene where it really kind of starts when he gets there and it's eerie and it's empty and he's like, this is wrong. And he's like, I have to act, because if I don't act, my dad is dead within the hour. And that's the close call and, the instance with the cop. And then, not that the moment of killing the cop and was he wasn't a head of a family, was he?
No.
But
No.
one of the was responsible. So not that the killing of the 2 men wasn't a tipping point, it was, but I feel the the point was almost just before that when he makes the choice. He's like, I'll do it. It's kind of Frodo in the Ring. Like everyone's arguing about who is, we got to do something. And he's like, I'll take the ring to Mordor. I'll be the one to kill him, knowing full well that's not what his dad would have wanted. And then the rest is just a snowball of that choice, the action of actually doing it. And then, but I definitely agree, John, when then he moves to Italy and, he's given that out and that peace and that little, it's so encapsulated in that, literally, and they portray it so perfectly because it is falling in love, getting married. Just short of having a kid, really. And then it's all gone. And as if it never happened. Like, as far as anyone in America is concerned, it's a complete side plot that never happened unless he tells someone about it. And then once that happiness was snatched away and out of left field, he doesn't even see it coming. And then it's like, there's no hope for his redemption. He's done. He's in. He's all in. He's doubling down. The chips are in as soon as he's back. And maybe that's also with that 1 year line that he's been back. It's not because otherwise it's implied that he just got back, because it's the next scene when he's talking to, was it Kay?
Yeah. Kay.
But the fact that it's been at least a year. So it's like, so what has he been doing for a year? Like, he's been cementing himself as the new head of the family, because that's the next scene after that we see is that when Don Corleone is going, no, you listen to Michael. I'm as his advisor, but he is the one leading the family at this point. It really good character development, really, in a short span relative, of time in the movie. It never felt like with Michael that it was moving too fast or that his reaction wasn't proportional. They do a good enough job, especially after establishing it's been many years, but you totally buy this fresh face character that's in the background of the wedding, almost a side character to, Don Michael at the end. Like I totally buy that in the course of this film.
There are so many questions I want to ask you, so many things I want to talk about just springing from that. But one of the things that I want to hit on that Coppola said that actually, and I'll go ahead and share, for once it wasn't my friend Joey, it was a different friend who I got into a spirited argument with about The Godfather, because I was reading an interview with Coppola, and I was young enough that I hadn't really thought about it on this level, but Coppola offered, he said, the whole movie, in a sense, he goes, it's not just about this, but a very large part of it is about the lies that exist in a marriage. And and that's why the door closes on Kay at the end, is it's about this traditional old structure where women were shut out. And it was about the lies that the men told to them. And my friend very much disagreed with me, even though I said, well, Coppola said it. He said, no, that's not the case. I was like, but what
does he know? That must be artist interpretation. But he's the artist who made the film. So his interpretation would be the correct one.
Exactly. But, Tristan, did you get that from this film, like at first? Or because I think a lot of people very much, it's almost like this film exists in a sense like Fight Club or Glengarry Glen Ross, where there are people who are fans of it that there are little tidbits like that where it's just on the periphery of it. Do you think that that's an accessible interpretation of it? Or do you think that all of the other stuff is so engrossing that can be missed?
I feel like if you asked me that question about Godfather Part 2, I would say yes, absolutely. But with Godfather Part 1, it's not something that immediately springs to mind. I hate to say anything is an invalid interpretation, but that is, like, of what I take from the film, that's definitely not in the top 5.
But let me ask you this question on top of it then. Don't you think that what lends itself most strongly to that interpretation is the lingering question, and I know how I answer it, of, do you think Michael ever told Kay about Apollonia?
Yeah.
You do? Really?
Well, we saw they
No.
In Godfather Part 3, they go to Sicily together.
Okay. You can't flash forward there. Looking at this as
what are
an
you talking
individual,
about? You can't flash forward there.
I'm sorry.
I
Did I
haven't seen
stutter?
the third one yet.
That's okay.
That doesn't ruin anything.
Yeah,
No,
I understand.
nothing,
I mean,
nothing.
I will say I agree with John. Based on just watching the first movie, I would think he would never tell her.
Oh yeah,
about
no, like
Apollona.
if that's the question, like if within the time frame of the first movie, no, I don't think that he did.
Thanks for backing me up on that, Darren.
Well,
I
he
appreciate
clarified your poorly worded question.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. It's my fault. Yes. Okay. Well, now we know who Michael and Kay are in this relationship, Tristan. So thank you very much for that. But setting aside the Kay thing, we've talked about Michael's arc. What did you think actually of Darren? What did you think of Vito's arc, of Marlon Brando's arc?
It was an interesting arc. I mean, honestly, I'll talk about it a little bit, but Sonny was actually a much more enjoyable character to me. I really liked the Sonny character. And actually, when my brain finally clicked, it was James Caan. I'm like, oh my gosh, because again, they're so young, they all look so different.
Mm-hmm.
But no, Vito, yeah, it's. Talk about. Looking at it as a film student and just the way they set the stage with that wedding and establish so much in almost a nonchalant way about him and his family and what it means and all of that. Again, wonderful performance. You think I thought he was dead. I'm like, 5 gunshots. You're not surviving that in 1946, but I guess you can. Anytime the medical facilities are like glass bottles, I'm just like, nope, you're not coming back. Sorry. But
I always notice the glass bottles for the IV, like instead of the plastic.
I'm just like, just kill me now. I don't want to survive this. But yeah, no, Vito, obviously, commanding performance, all the way through to the very end scene with his grandson. And it's very striking. Like Tristan said, on an hour of screen time or whatever it is that he actually gets in the movie. It's not a lot, but we get, the discussion with the 5 families, and we get the not wanting to go into narcotics, and you feel that wisdom. Like, it feels like an old character, and there's every line he says is very thoughtful. I mean, he really doesn't make any mistakes or bad judgments. It's just more on the things he's saying not being carried out like he wished or something like that. But you feel the Don's power definitely throughout.
Well, I know that with the last scene, and the thing is, this could be an urban legend thing that gets blown apart too. But one of the things I read, yes, he's playing with his grandson, but he carves up the rind to make the little monster fangs and everything. And supposedly that was a scene that they labored on because they felt it was important to underline that he dies as a monster. That even though we're sympathetic to Vito because he seems a very protective, loving
he's a family man,
right? But he's still the head of a crime syndicate that's responsible for corruption, gambling, and prostitution. It's
every time he says, I'll make him an offer he can't refuse, like, that's the nice way of saying, I'm going to mess up this guy's life. Like, either kill him or kill something near him, or like, it's not going to go well.
Right. Exactly.
It's very kind of Breaking Bad-ish, where it's like you want to be sympathetic to this character, but the things they do are not necessarily good things at all.
That's why Brando initially turned down this role. He actually turned it down a couple of times because he thought that the film glorified the mafia and he didn't want to be a part of it. But Coppola, was able to obviously convince him and say that that wasn't the only thing it was doing, that it was actually saying something more. And just as a side note, Orson Welles really wanted to be Vito. Like, he really wanted to be Vito, and he even offered. He said, "He's like, I'll lose weight. I will lose weight for this role." And he said, "He's like, no. When I was working on the screenplay with Mario Puzo, like, I had Marlon Brando in mind. It's like sorry."
I think that the studio at one point suggested Don Amici floated that by.
That
at
would have
one
been
point.
interesting.
That was one of the things that I read. But I mean, there's so many, again, urban legends sort of things. But, Tristan, in terms of the Don's arc, and Brando's complaint, do you think that his character and this film glorify the mob? Or do you think that it's one of those things where people, I'll draw a comparison to Glengarry Glen Ross. Everybody loves that film version and they love doing the Alec Baldwin speech, and it's very glitzy and very attention getting, but at its core, it's not really the point of Glengarry Glen Ross. Do you think that this film succeeds in its commentary, or is it undone by the charisma of its actors?
I think you can't have one without the other. I really don't. I think that, Darren brought up Breaking Bad. Whenever you have a protagonist who is an anti-hero or someone who does bad things, the way that stories are structured, if they're structured well, whether they're a bad person, like being a good protagonist doesn't mean being a good person. And I feel like the way the stories are structured, you root for the protagonist if it's a good protagonist, even if they're a bad person. And by rooting for that protagonist, you are in essence glorifying what they're doing, because you want them to succeed, even if it's them doing bad things. You want them to kill somebody. You want them to sell those drugs. You want them to get revenge. You want them to do all those things because that's what the protagonist wants. And you're along with that journey. But at the same time, you look at the end of the film, or towards the end of the film, with the baptism ceremony. This is not a glorification.
No.
Like, that's not a glorification scene. That's not a, like, look how cool Michael is. Like, even though that's badass, it's not a look at how cool Michael has become. It's look how far he's fallen.
Mm-hmm.
Cool scene. Awesome scene. He becomes the boss, but he sells his soul to do it. And so you have that commentary, but at the same time, you're glorifying it because you're making it look awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, I would say it's the tragedy, because really it's a tragedy of the family. So while you want things to go well, especially how they set it up at the beginning, I mean, the beginning and the wedding is the peak, and it's all a descent from there. That's the last time we see our characters happy and together. And it's the day of my daughter's wedding, and Michael is here. Let's have him be in the picture. And that's the happiest moment we see for Vito. Everything after that is a slide of his enemies crowding in, and he gets shot, and his son has to go into the family business that he doesn't want. Like, everything is a not just a tragedy, but a taking steps back and loss of that joy. And even in that day, there's moments where he has to make decisions. He has to be the Don. He can't just be a father for his daughter on that day. And there's always that those moments where he's having to compromise, being that face of a family, of the everything's all right. And that's the price that he pays for being the Don, because he knows if he doesn't, then he's going to lose his power and lose his ability and all of that. So I think that's that's how it fits into the story, where yes, he's a protagonist character and you do sympathize and want them to succeed, but you realize that no, in this real life world, every step and choice they're taking, I want to be a strong and have the family business. Well, that means there's a price on your head, and people are trying to kill you at every turn, and that your family's in danger. You lose sons, and that gets to him eventually.
Well, what's interesting, and this is a recent thing, an interesting interpretation of the way certain things have gone throughout history and stuff like that, where I was listening to the Revisionist History podcast with Malcolm Gladwell, and he had an episode dedicated to the fact, it was, I forget which mobster it was, but this mobster, he was a relatively famous mobster, and his happiest day was when his daughter got graduated from college and got a normal job. And the whole thesis, and I think this is supported by Vito Corleone's hopes for Michael, was that I'm doing these things because I feel I have to, but it's so that my kids can be better than me. So in a sense, I do think that there's a very tragic arc because Vito knew that Michael was his last shot at actually participating in the real American dream and having your kid go off and be the war hero businessman who contributes to society instead of subsisting off of its dark underbelly and corruption. And I do think that is a very resonant. I think that's probably why Vito, it's hard to condemn him because you can get that sense that if he had felt that he had another option, he would have taken that too. But he did this because he felt he had to, but he doesn't want it for his kids. But Sonny was a loss, so, okay, fine. Well, all right, Michael, I got a shot at it.
Right.
I've seen a few families like that.
Yeah. You got to take it in stride.
I mean, Sonny wasn't ready to bear the mantle. He was brash. He made quick decisions. He and then that whole family dynamic with Tom, with Robert Duvall's character, who's this kind of adopted pseudo son, but not blood, but not Italian, but obviously respected. And I mean, amazing performance again by Duvall in that. I loved that angle that he brought in that story. And it was more, because then you had the second generation of like Sonny and Tom trying to balance each other's out and make the best decision, and they just make terrible decisions, and it goes very poorly. And then Michael, when he's finally comes back through his trial by fire to become the Don, like he's really the heir apparent at that point to really be the next generation.
Now, what's interesting too is that Carlo, who Connie marries, played by Gianni Russo.
Yeah,
he supposedly has real connections with that underworld, and to hear him tell the story, he said that he wanted either Sonny, Michael, or Carlo, and they were like, "Oh, fine, you could be Carlo." And I'm like, "Well, it feels a little revisionist to tell it that way." But at the same time, did either of you ever get the sense that there was an authenticity to Carlo that wasn't there with the other actors? Do you think that he brought anything special to the role with this knowledge of that underworld?
Not really. I mean, Carlo's Carlo. I honestly feel like he could have been played by anybody. I don't think there's anything special about that performance. I really don't like. And I know it sounds like I'm trying to, like crap on the actor, but really, I just think the role is so minor. I mean, like the effect that role has is, of course, major because of what he does to Connie, and then of course Sonny. But I don't feel like, oh my God, I can't imagine anybody other than Gianni Russo as Carlo. No, not at all. I mean, like there was actually, he'd never acted before. And Brando didn't want him in the film. He's like, he's never acted before. Like, why should he be in this picture? And Russo, according to the urban legend, like Russo went to Brando's house to yell at him and threaten him. And Brando thought it was a bit. And he's just like, "Oh, this was amazing. Yeah, you can totally be in the film."
Oh, wow. That's pretty fantastic. I will say that the scene where Michael comes in and busts him on the phone, and basically says to him, he's like, "Oh, you don't think this charade would fool a Corleone, did you?" Like,
yeah,
I thought he really played that scene very well.
No, it's a great scene, but that's a Michael scene. That's not a Carlo scene.
Oh, no, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. I agree with you. This is not the type of role where I think that Russo brought something so special to the role that you couldn't. I just wanted to field the question because I didn't find out about his supposed real life connections until much later on, and it always fascinated me that was the case. But one thing I want to touch on before, and I know we're rounding third, as we love to say, but one thing I want to touch on is I think in recent years, and I need somebody to tell me, am I reading too much into this or not? Right. But Puzo definitely seems like a guy who researched things very, very meticulously. And the character that, especially in recent years, has been the most unsettling to me is Jack Woltz. Because there was always this sense of like, oh, he's an old school, old timey producer. And yeah, things were. And then, of course, relatively recent headlines over the last several years and stuff like that. And I almost have a sense that Puzo was trying to give a warning to everybody about what Hollywood was really like. And people just didn't listen. They focused on the horsehead scene and not what was plainly being said about how the movie industry worked. So am I reading too much into that?
No, not at all, because that's exactly what Puzo was trying to do. Well, I mean, maybe that wasn't exactly what Puzo was trying to do, but he was modeling Waltz after real people. Like he modeled him after Jack Warner, the chief of Warner Brothers at the time, as well as Louis B. Mayer. Like the majority of his personality was modeled after Mayer. And like the one of the big things about Mayer was that he was really into racing, like in horse racing and everything like that. So like that's he drew a lot from that. But there's a reason why we have an image in our brains about a skeezy movie producer, because it's real.
Yeah, well, the thing is, I know that there were certain things that were left on the cutting room floor of the theatrical cut when Tom Hagen is pulling up that might have been too unsettling for audiences, but it's definitely there in the book. And it's, I don't know. I would rather focus on what a tremendous job, and we haven't given him any real credit, I don't think, or at least not enough to this point. I think Duvall in that scene is so masterful of the guy who's just keeping his cool because he's like, you're digging your own grave right now. Like he's just sitting there he's like, yeah, yell at me all that you want to. You do not like how this is going to end.
One thing, like you talked about theatrical cut. One thing that I find really interesting about this movie, or at least about behind the scenes, is that the first cut that Coppola turned in was just over 2 hours.
Really?
That was his director's cut, was just over 2 hours.
Really?
And Robert Evans was like, what is this? He's like, there's nothing about the family. Like, this is all plot. And so Coppola's just like, oh, okay, cool.
We're taking the reins off. Okay. Yeah. Well, here's my 5-hour cut version 2, and then we'll meet in the middle.
But then he turned in this cut, and then Robert Evans is just like, fantastic, let's go with it.
Although I will say, with the urban legend thing that goes on, in later years, Evans claimed that he sat down and pushed Coppola out of the editing bay and saved the film, and that he deserved all of the credit for the final cut that got out there.
That sounds like Evans.
Yes, it does. The kid stays in the picture, or at least in the editing bay. So, yeah.
But yeah, like Paramount tried to fire Coppola many times because
that sounds like a Paramount Coppola thing.
Yeah.
Yes, it does.
They tried to fire him because they said that like it was too dark. Like Willis's cinematography was too dark. They hated it. They said that he had unnecessary expenses, that he was taking too long, but he still delivered the picture under budget and on time. And the Willis effect of the tobacco filter and the overhead lighting would be mimicked for 20 years.
It's so funny too, because that the idea that they're mad about how he's managing the production and he brings it in under budget and on time, that was not Coppola's reputation, period. Now, Apocalypse Now didn't help him any. And I think that's probably where his reputation got cemented. But the simple fact that they were, taking those sorts of shots here is unsettling. And I got to ask before we get to our ratings, Darren, do you think that Nino Rota's score delivers? Do you feel that it's more than just the theme, or do you think that it's the theme and could take or leave the rest?
Yeah, the theme, everyone knows the theme.
Yes.
If they may not know what it's from, but they know the theme. I think my mom had like a jewelry box or something that had this theme that played when you opened it, and I didn't know what it was from, but it was just a really pretty, Now, maybe it was another thing, but it wasn't Jaws for sure. It was something like this. But yeah, no, the music is great. I mean, on reflecting, trying to think of like, were there moments that were punctuated, or could I think of another moment besides the theme moments? No, like it's very background and very setting the tone. But
The hospital.
I was gonna say, I do think of the hospital and its lack of music, and it's quiet. Or is there no music? I remember there. Well,
No,
there's
punctuation
music
when they're standing
Right.
outside.
Yeah, when they're
that's
sitting
true.
outside.
I'm thinking of right before that, when he comes in and it's like dead silent and there's nobody around,
Right.
and there's like, you get that tension. So
And for many years, I had a friend who, anytime he walked into a room, would go, "I'm Enzo, the baker," and so that was his thing for quite some time.
I did like all those little payoffs, though, of like establishing like the baker and the mortician, and like we see throughout the film, and 10 years, so they use the characters a lot. But
Yeah.
no, good score though. Nothing that super jumped out at me, but it definitely carried the mood, and also the I guess we call it the baptism scene, or like where
Yes.
Michael's not there, but everybody's dying. That is a wonderfully put together sequence.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I mean, I love the score. I think it's absolutely. I think it's one of those iconic scores of all time. But I do think that you have a perfectly valid point. I think that what it is, it's a masterful score, specifically because they used it the right way. It would have been too easy to go either too much or too little here, and they threaded the needle. And I think Rhoda gave them exactly what they needed for that to happen. So now that we've talked about so much about the film, Tristan, is it fair to presume that both of us are going to give it a 5? Yeah,
I'm giving it a 6, man.
Yeah, I'm going to give it a rating I can't refuse. I'm giving it 10 stars.
This is the greatest movie of all time. This is like, I know that everybody wants to say that it's Citizen Kane, but I think the BFI just changed their ratings. They knocked Citizen Kane down to number 2 and put Godfather up to 1. I thought
it was Paddington 2 that was number 1. Isn't that? that is another ranking, but
yeah, like I say, like Godfather and Godfather Part 2, just the greatest movies of all time. Everything's firing on all cylinders. The editing, the cinematography, the acting, the music, just the direction. Like I could go on for another couple hours talking about it.
Yes, I mean, and that's the thing, is we are both going to be in agreement on this, Tristan, obviously. But Darren, the question everybody's had in the back of their minds this entire time is, what rating are you giving it, and are you prepared to change your home address?
Well, yeah, I get, you asked at the beginning, does this film work if it came out today? And for me, it kind of did come out today, because that's when I first, absorbed it. And, I've enjoyed some of Coppola's work that I have seen, but I haven't seen very much of his. So I don't have that nostalgia angle. I have its place in history for sure. I mean, everybody talks about how The Godfather is great and is good. I have heard that the second one is better. I've heard people say that, or I don't know if that means story-wise or maybe it's shorter.
It is not short.
Spoiler alert, it's not.
Oh, no.
Godfather Part 2 is 2 movies in 1.
Clear your calendar for Godfather Part 2.
Is there do they take out the Sicilian interlude in the middle? Like, is that a thing? But no, I did enjoy this movie. Would I feel like I would watch it over and over? Is it something I would put into my lineup? That's kind of more on personal preference as far as the things I enjoy. But I will give it a solid 4 bottles of cannoli. It's really, really good. Like, I think you encapsulated it really well, Tristan, when you said all the pieces are firing on all cylinders. Like, there's no moment where you think, oh, why did they use that take? Or, oh, that this character is weak, and why did they even put that in? But maybe maybe I need to steepen it a little more. Like I need a couple more viewings because I was just trying to say like, where is this story going? What? Oh, Michael's the protagonist. Like, so the
Sure.
very first viewing, you're just sailing the seas as they rise. So I think that might flex a little bit more after multiple watchings, and maybe if I watch it with a film class or two. But no, I would, and as everyone knows, I don't like giving half numbers because then you might as well grade it on a scale of 10. But I will give it a 4.
Okay, that's a decent rating out of the gate. Lock up your horse tonight, though. So, Darren,
hey, last time we did Terminator and I gave it a 2, you gave me crap for like 5 weeks. So
that is true. Thank you for, you know what? That is very clever. That's very political. You've distracted me from the 4-star rating here. But if people want to discuss with you your reaction to the first viewing of The Godfather, where can they find you online?
They can find me on my website, which is drsci-fi.com, also on Twitter, Twitch, and Instagram. They can also hear me right here on the Nerd Party Network talking sci-fi with SETI Alpha 3 as a Star Trek podcast, and our newest show, Maker's Method, with Derek Young, as we talk about making things. Not film. We haven't been making film, but we enjoy adding that new flavor here on the Nerd Party.
It's a terrific new show. It really is.
It really is. Yeah, everyone should listen
to it. It's really, really good. Tristan, where can people find you if they want to, leave the gun and take the cannoli?
Well, you can find me on Twitter and Letterboxd at The Insane Robin. It's a great place to find me and interact with me. And you can also email the show, just like you talked about earlier in the podcast. And also, I have a show revival happening next month on August 12th with the second season of Lower Decks, Star Trek Lower Decks. We're starting up our commentary show again with Charlene Schmidt, and everyone should tune in, listen to our backlogged episodes, and look for us coming out next month.
Next month it is. And you can find me crawling around out there as Kessel Junkie, KESSELJUNKIE, embracing my Sicilian roots and my sunny-like temper, occasionally on Twitter, an awful lot when I watch bad movies like Adam Sandler's Jack and Jill. You get my reactions to that over on Letterboxd. And you can find me here on the network co-hosting Aggressive Negotiations, which is a Star Wars podcast with Matthew Rushing. But thank you for joining us for this week's Houselights, and come in and join us next week when Darren experiences for the first time. And I think, Tristan, is this going to be your first experience as well?
This is my first time. I've never seen it. I don't know anything about it. And so I'm going to press play without knowing anything about the plot.
I cannot wait to hear these reactions to Francis Ford Coppola's next film in the 1970s exploration, a bit of a small-scale breather film called The Conversation. So tune in next time to Houselights.
Join the revolution. Join the Nerd Party.